Good evening. We'll call the meeting of the Parker School Building Committee to order here. The date is October 16th, time is 6 o'clock. We are recording this meeting for the viewing public, and that can be viewed anytime at Chelmsford Telemedia. So we'll get right to business here and go to approval of meeting minutes. And I sent out meeting minutes late today, so sorry for that, but everybody should have gotten them. And if you had a chance to review them, if we have any comments, we take those now. I have one change, Vivian. Did we meet at 7 o'clock or was it 6 o'clock? The last meeting?
I thought it was 6.
It was 6, right? We haven't had a 7 o'clock meeting, so that's, it says 7, yeah. Yeah, I know, I saw your, because I sent out your edits, and anyway, so that's the only change I had, was just 6
Sorry about
o'clock.
that.
Oh, no. Hey.
I said, this whole month flew. I couldn't believe we were already meeting today. I'm like,
No. Any other comments or questions on the meeting minutes from September 18th? Seeing,
Did the adjourn time correct that they?
during the meeting, at 6:30, yeah, perfect, yeah. So- Yeah, there you go, there you go.
told you I was in a hurry.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes of September 18th.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of our meeting on September 18th, 2025.
I have a motion from Dennis King. Can I get a second?
Second?
Second from John Souza. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Okay. Approval of monthly project invoices is the next item. I'll turn that over to David and Hamdi.
All right. Just, thank you, Pat, but before we jump in, I just, again, wanted to remind everyone that the website has been launched. That was sent out on, the vehicle of that being launched was Dr. Lang's 6 o'clock email blast, I'll call it. And I know that the school district is also pushing the launch as well, I believe, on social media, other platforms as well.
Good,
So, yeah, it's out there.
thanks.
As far as the budget,
David, just make sure that you're talking into the microphone, please.
just regarding the budget, we're going to present this as part of the committee packet every month. Now that AI3 is on board, we will expand the designer. We will expand a few of these MSBA cost codes. It's still going to fit on one page, but we'll expand the budget accordingly. But this is basically kind of the rolled up budget. And then for the invoice log for invoice summary number 5 for a period ending 9/30, we have, I'm testing my eyes, 20,000, is that, I need help. 859, thank you, Hamdi. So be looking to have a motion, and we have the motion actually on the slide.
Okay, any discussion on David's presentation of the invoice for the month? Questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve for the monthly invoice from left field.
Motion to approve the September 2025 invoice package number 5 in the amount of $20,859 as presented, as issued and presented.
Okay, I have a motion from Dennis King. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second from Christine Clancy. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Okay.
Then we're going to go back to the budget slide real quick, but the first column to the left, column A, that is the original PFA budget. And then column B is budget moves or reclasses. And then column C is the actual current budget. So what we've done on all projects is that once the OPM, us, gets on board, the designer, we end up doing a budget revision request. This is the first one. We refer to it as a BRR, and all it is an accounting mechanism document that we use with the MSBA to have our budget, which is always one step ahead, and it allows the MSBA to adjust their budget in ProPay. So all we're seeing, we're moving money around in column B. You'll see that it's still a net zero. But before I present the BRR, I wanted to show a snapshot of the budget. So the BRR, this is the slide that Hamdi put together. It's kind of a cut and paste of the form. Paul signs it, Jay signs it, and Dennis will sign it within their respective roles within the town and the committees. This has to be presented to the school building committee before we send it to the MSBA. Assuming we get this approved, Dan McSweeney from our office will share it via DocuSign, and then we take care of it from there. So all it is we are moving money around and taking money from one bucket and moving it to a different bucket. So this is BRR number 1, and this is for the alignment of the OPM and the designer contracts.
Okay. Does this, so this falls through, the budget that you just showed is realigned. These are the changes that,
Correct. So if, this is the left field budget, and if you were to go into the MSBA ProPay portal to look at the MSBA's budget, it would not align with this yet.
right,
But the BRR is the vehicle for, both parties to align them.
excellent. Okay. Any further discussion on the review and approval of the budget revision requests? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the BRR.
Make a motion to approve the budget revision request number 1 is issued and presented.
I have a motion from Dennis King. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second from Brandon. Any further discussion or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous.
Before Julie gets into the presentation, I just want to introduce Tori Geyer. She's a fantastic project architect that's helping Julie and the team. So just want to show you, you'll see her face, and some of you have already seen her face during the educational visioning sessions, but just wanted to introduce her to everybody.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here. So we'll start off tonight with a brief schedule overview. We had mentioned at the last meeting that we like to start the meetings off with our overall schedule just to track progress. So we're right where that large arrow is in October, and we're working towards development of some conceptual options and space summaries, all tracking towards a cost estimating exercise this December, ultimately leading to that PDP submission in January. You'll see that the Phase 2 section is designated as to be determined. That is assuming that following a project funding appropriation, then we would move into Phase 2. And looking specifically at the PDP Step 1, we also showed this slide last meeting, but you'll see that a lot more has been initiated, so a lot of activities. And we will report on many that have been initiated in tonight's presentation, such as the visioning sessions and our investigation activities. One takeaway from the last time we met as well was the committee requested sort of a clear guideline on the amount of action items, upcoming meetings, meetings when decisions have to be made. So we've assembled this calendar version to show that the building committee meetings tonight will be looking at some evaluation criteria as we move into our initial options, getting feedback on that. Next meeting, we'll be looking at grade reconfiguration, some iterations of options. Neither of those necessarily require any immediate action items. Where we start to address some action items would be, from AI3's point, December, we'll be submitting the conceptual options out for cost estimating. So having that additional cost information will inform your decisions in January. In the same month, at the same time, we'll be looking for the district to have completed the educational program. So you'll recall that's the document that the MSBA will learn your learning intentions through. So that will be the guideline for establishing the district's goals, educational goals for each enrollment option. And then the real decision-making will happen in the month of January. So once you're confident in all of the information that we've collected, the options that we've assembled, the enrollment information, we'll be looking for the committee to be able to make a selection of the enrollment option January 15th, and additionally be confident in approving the PDP submission to the MSBA at that same meeting. There will also be times where we attend school committee meetings to make sure that the school committee is informed of the process and feels confident as well in endorsing the educational program. So this week, we had Principal Blagg was very kind to let us walk through the school. And so the professional team was assessing the existing conditions, specifically looking for noncompliance in terms of accessibility, building code, and energy code, as well as just some general sort of building design flaws or things that could be considered an encumbrance for the learning activities. So accessibility, we know that based on the SOI submission, that is something that the district is very aware of within the existing school, given that there are so many stairs in the school. In addition to that, there's doorways that are not compliant with accessibility, many protruding objects, non-compliant sinks, railings, inaccessible passive egress in and out of the building, and then even rooms that aren't accessible from the elevator. So all of that will be compiled into a report, as well as many other items that we flagged, and that will get included in the overall PDP submission. Similarly, building code infractions, the railings had a lot of non-compliance issues in terms of it having that ladder effect where students could technically climb up it. The components of the railings are spaced too far apart. In some cases, the egress widths of doorways wouldn't be wide enough given the occupancy load and the egress from those spaces. And just in some cases, rooms that you'd have to pass through to exit the building or access those rooms aren't necessarily code compliant. There's also interior and exterior ramps that exceed the allowable slope. And again, numerous other items that will all be documented in our reports. The energy code as well. So Chelmsford is a stretch code community. Although even if you were just bringing the building to the base repair option, you would still have to bring it up to the base energy code. And the kind of one of the biggest infractions in terms of the base energy code for the existing building would just be its lack of insulation at the exterior envelope in general. They actually, in the 60s, had a pretty inventive exterior design. You know, it's one of those kind of pseudo-brutalist buildings with a lot of those concrete profiles, which makes for a really interesting look from the outside. Unfortunately, those concrete profiles are really just transferring that outside temperature right on into the building. So without any insulation, without a vapor barrier, I would guess that without having been in the school in kind of the late spring or summer, it probably gets kind of moist in there. So that would be something that you'd want to address in a base repair code upgrade option. And then we have one more slide on what we're calling just sort of general building design flaws. that could be an encumbrance to the learning. So for example, there isn't any acoustical insulation between classroom walls or classroom to corridor walls. So it might sound kind of echoey at times. And then there are a few rooms that have conduit posts or columns running within the center of the learning space, which isn't ideal. There's just general aging and cracking of the surfaces. We definitely commend facilities on maintaining the buildings themselves, but with things like a lack of expansion joints, control joints, those materials are just going to push against each other over time and ultimately crack. And even something that stuck out to us was just the mashup of interior finishes in the building. So not necessarily something that isn't code compliant, but just a design choice for sure. With the concrete and the wood and the painted CMU, and so a lot of,
Eclectic.
it's an eclectic, definitely eclectic collection of materials. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And then, of course, we've heard too, just I think one of the first descriptions of the space is just how dark it is. So, again, nothing that's not code compliant, but it doesn't make for the most pleasant learning environment. Looking out to the site, we have been working with the geotechnical engineers to establish an initial proposed boring site plan. So the borings are necessary because the soil that is taken as samples from the borings will ultimately inform a foundation design for a building project. And so the geotechnical engineer has, in conjunction with AI3, has located some initial borings. This is in draft form, so we're still looking to get feedback from the district and DPW in terms of, if these are, practical enough boring locations, if we can not, or if they're kind of in the way of any sporting events or anything that's going on. We do have some flexibility in shifting those around. So we'll continue to finalize the plan, and then at this point, the actual boring is scheduled to take place October 27th. And so that would just require, they will have a rig on site that's digging small holes down a certain depth, and then they'll pull those samples out, have them tested.
What was the date of that again?
October 27th.
And that was 4 days of borings, right?
That's right, yep.
Yeah. Yeah. We typically have representatives from the district meet with our geotech engineers on site. So when they're doing, when the rig drops on site, there's a dialogue, there's some movement of some of the boring locations based on, like Julie was saying, whether it's moving just outside of an infield or moving just maybe some disruption to a location in a parking area. Maybe it moves just slightly off of that. So there's some movement generally in the 14 borings, 12 to 14 borings that they'll do. And so that dialogue is important to make sure everybody's on the same page when the rig gets dropped and they start drilling.
And you'll notice we've located 2 that are closer to the existing building. Those are primarily to inform any addition renovation options. So we would just want to know the geotechnical evidence at those sites.
Who uses those fields this time of year?
Yeah.
Pop Warner?
Football is primarily, and we use it during the day for like phys ed classes, but we can work around it for a couple of days. It's mostly the football in the evening. I think that goes until the end of October.
I think it's like 5 to 7-ish. So I guess the time frame would be during the day, like 8 to, and now also buses come in, so I guess anything in that parking lot.
Arrive around 8 o'clock.
So yeah, I guess it's just logistically, and so we have the email, and we'll provide some information on what we know for utilities. And I think it's just that B1 and B2, which are on either side of the building, are just going to be the trickiest. And actually B5.
Yeah, B6 as well. But
B6 too.
basically the ones closer to the building.
Yeah, and I guess also from a noise, how deep are they going?
They'll go, down to a depth of 20 feet.
So not So each boring should probably take an hour or two, probably, I would say.
And there will be a little bit of cleanup after each
Yeah.
one, just to fill it in, so.
So there will be appropriate cleanup so that they could use the fields at the end of the day.
Correct, yeah, they would do those executing the tests would do their best to cover the holes. There would likely be some additional maintenance required from whether that's school facilities or DPW to come in, and if you want to apply more grass seed or, those additional touches.
Probably notify them of the potential
There could be ruts
sinking, there
from
could
the
be
track.
ruts
That's the
from
thing
it.
is we're probably, we're closing out the fields now, so, but yeah, we'll look at it and see what we need to do. I guess the only, I was just looking at this today too, is, so B1 and B2 and B5, that's just so close to the school is the only other thought. I mean, 10/27, I think we can make it work, but 11/4 is a full day of no school.
We can also
So I don't know
shift
if
those
there's just a
days.
flexibility
Oh,
just to
yeah.
not have kids on the school, because we won't, and it's a full, I mean, I know it's probably reserved for election day, but there's really nothing going on at the Parker School. It's a
It's a
professional,
PD day, so staff would be there.
staff would be there. Oh, so you still
we
have
could-
staff at that building that day, because sometimes you have different,
Yeah, I'd have to check the schedule to see
Okay,
who's
yeah.
doing what those days. How early do the borings start and how late do they go?
In terms of the time of day,
Time of day?
I could find out. I would think it would be within business hours.
I mean, would it be possible to, the early part of the day probably wouldn't work just because of the school starting, but could we ever try, because I do know we need to get the borings up near the school, but could we ever do those like the last of the day of each of the 4 days? I know they gotta move the truck around a little bit, but at least, if school's out at 3 o'clock, it wouldn't be quite as disruptive to have the borings happening from 3 to 5.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, I'll certainly make the inquiry.
The other thing I was just thinking, Christine, maybe I can reach out to Bob Wanaczu and see if just for that week, we don't have too much going on at the high school because of fall sports are done. Maybe we could move it to the plateau.
we could, yeah. I know they were looking in general because they're fighting daylight, so I could reach out to them.
I'll look up with you on that.
Yeah.
It might be easier just to relocate them for the week.
But they wouldn't be, if they're there like till 5, I guess it depends when the practice starts, I guess. Yeah, so if they started earlier, that would be an impact, yeah.
Are they trying to start earlier because of the light?
I think they were struggling and starting at 5. It was more 5:30, so if the rig is out of there and are they parking the rig on site during the day? Sometimes they leave it on site, so we just want to have a space where, I'm sure there's some space, but we can have it, sit for the 4 days.
Might be a good idea to have Majid on a call.
That's what I was thinking. I was gonna
Yeah.
respond, and we have and we went out with our stormwater to get some additional information, so we could probably have a call first and next week.
Yeah.
The other idea, I know sometimes they have a really early start, so if they started like at 6 in the morning to do B1, B2, and they were, because you probably have staff starting to show up at 7, right?
No, closer to 7:30.
7:30?
Yeah.
So you might be, if you're doing 4 days, if you do B1 and then you jump to the field, so maybe you hit those at first thing, because sometimes they do start 6, 7, I don't know what time they want to start though.
Yeah.
The first day, they probably won't drop it that early.
Right.
But the second, third,
Maybe
and fourth
second
day,
and
maybe
third.
that, yeah.
So that might be even easier, because in the afternoon, you still have people dropping off for activity, so like,
Right.
I feel like in the morning, it's before 7:15, at least it's kind of a ghost town over there.
And you mentioned if you are planning on sort of closing the field down in the next week or two, we could look at just moving it after that.
Yeah, so we've, the field, as far as like the irrigation, that's been shut off and blown out. So, because that's one thing, we were gonna turn the heads on to make sure there's no conflict, but that's all shut off, so.
Okay.
But yeah, we can, I guess we'll have a call, I'll respond to that email, we'll have a call next week to coordinate.
Great, yeah, no, we appreciate the interest and compromise and flexibility on that. So this week, we were also able to, after being able to tour the buildings and confirm some spaces and any additions that have come up, like new walls that weren't matching any existing plans, we have since been able to generate a 3D model of the existing building, so that will be a useful tool in analyzing the spaces, and also as we start to get into generating some actual building options and during the PSR phase, that will be useful as well. So we have the main level, the intermediate level, and the lower level. By our next meeting, we'll also be able to share an analysis based on the MSBA space guidelines versus your existing building, and be able to show which learning spaces the MSBA would consider undersized. So this week, we also had our visioning sessions, another one of our visioning sessions. So first visioning session in September was the core leadership group, and that was really specific to identifying some goals and norms of the district. And the outcomes were that the group was able to generate these 6 goals, which really center around embracing every learner, collaboration, creating a safe environment, fostering growth, supporting the whole child, and honoring the community. Then in our second session, that was open to a larger group of students and staff. This was run by our educational program consultant, Mike Prolo, and the outcomes here were that groups were able to focus on all of the age groups that are considered for the various enrollment options, get a better understanding of the traits and developmental stages of each of those students, and ultimately having that background knowledge would then just help inform any future kind of discussions on the benefits, advantages, or disadvantages of the enrollment options. And in our most recent visioning session this week, the participants were able to discuss what you all value in learning, with concepts including hands-on collaboration, student input, simulation and role play, curiosity, visual learning, trust, activity, social connection, a lot of things identified on these sticky notes. Participants also discussed how to improve collaboration and interdisciplinary learning. So there weren't any the visioning sessions aren't intended to sort of establish rules for the project. So those aren't the situation where we're selecting an enrollment option or anything. It's really just to hear from the students and staff, keep them involved, get their feedback, and also hear the way that you guys do things in the district, just to inform how we start to think about the spaces that could support all of those learning activities that you're looking to do. And I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I know a few members of the committee were at all of the visioning sessions. So if there's any observations or reflections you want to share, we would definitely want to hear those this evening. Otherwise,
one of the nice things in these sessions, at least the last 2, is we have students there. So it gives the student perspective of, what they feel works for them for education and how they like to learn. So I appreciated to hear their opinions that were there.
pretty unshy students too.
Very unshy students. They were very, yes,
Yeah.
they weren't shy about saying what they like and they don't like, yeah.
Yeah.
Josh, did you want
I've found the visioning sessions really exciting to think about what could be. So it's a lot of searching at what's most important and what we think would best meet the needs of kids, and thinking of it beyond barriers to what are we what are we aiming for, and then we can deal with some of the details, see if that works later. But the visioning it's really it's energized me, and I think it's energized a lot of our staff who are attending them. It's super exciting, and the kids have loved it. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it's been great. The educational consultants that they brought in are clearly educators, and they're really good at getting people talking and thinking and moving, and the 3-hour sessions go by very quickly. So that's a high compliment for anyone who doesn't like to sit. We're constantly moving and talking, and it's run quite well.
I realize I have a lot in common with fifth graders. I'm impulsive, I sometimes speak when I'm not supposed to, and I fidget a lot, so it was enlightening.
I think that'll be helpful as we get further into the
No, the first 2 sessions were great. I think we're all looking forward to the next one as well, to kind of bring everything together. For the viewing audience, we had about 40 to 45 individuals join us for the first two, so we expect about the same for the third one. And it was a good mix of staff from the schools. We had some parents of kids at Parker Middle School. We actually invited some admin and teachers from the fourth grade to join the group because one of the options is a 4, 5, 6 school. And we wanted to get their perspective because setup-wise, fourth grade runs a little bit differently than fifth and sixth grade as far as teaming is concerned. So I think they very much appreciated being part of the process. And Mike and his partner really did a very nice job of facilitating the sessions. I think everyone felt heard. Everyone was able to give their perspective and walk away with, I think, just a better understanding of where we're at and what's to come. So overall, I thought they were excellent. We're all looking forward to for next Tuesday.
Thank you. No, we really appreciate that feedback. I know that in our observation of the visioning sessions, the groups that are in those are very open to communicating and immediately sharing ideas. So that's always nice to see because we've been in other districts where it can be a lot more shelled of participants. Okay, great. So the initial options for consideration. So we put together, we'll have a matrix at the end that outlines all of the options that encompass these broader categories. But the first would be a code upgrade option that we'll call option X. And this is an option that the MSBA requires you to carry through the PDP and the PSR. This is really just focused on bringing the building up to code based on compliance thresholds. So it doesn't address any educational space deficiencies. For example, if your classrooms are undersized, this does not look at making them adequately sized based on MSBA guidelines. It wouldn't address like making the building brighter, adding more natural daylight. It would really be bringing using the capital repairs to bring it up to code. And there are really two thresholds that require whether or not you need to bring it up to code. The first would be the accessibility upgrades. So if the cost of the repairs is greater than 30% of the assessed value in any 3-year period, that would trigger compliance requirements. Or similarly, fire protection upgrades. So if cost of repairs is greater than 33% of the assessed value, or if the area is greater than 7,500 square feet, that would trigger it as well. So this is an option that MSBA requires us to carry through. We recognize that it wouldn't resolve your overcrowding issues or anything like that, and it would be, identifying capital repairs that would have to take place over the course of a few years, as opposed to a singular project. We wanted to remind the group of the grade level configurations for consideration. The enrollment option for grades 5 to 6 being 930 students, enrollment options for grades 4 through 6 at 1,390 students, or the enrollment option for grades 5 through 8 at 1,885 students, and that the following options consider each of these sites. So we are showing the McCarthy School rear fields as an additional site. We recognize that that was something that has been up for consideration. So we just wanted to, we'll have a slide that assesses those site conditions. So the first is the existing Parker School site, and we have, this would be the site constraints diagram. So you're seeing that there are wetlands on site and the riverfront area. That's no surprise, being that there is the existing stream that runs through the building. And with any wetland, that does require a 100-foot buffer. So the orange line here is a buffer that does not allow any kind of construction within it. Additionally, the 200-foot riverfront area just extends that, and so no building can occur within this cross-hatched blue area. And then the outline of the existing building, and you can see there is relatively flat topography at the fields, and then it starts to drop off as you get towards the woods. Looking at that site, and identifying buildable versus non-buildable area. So everything in that dark purple, we would consider non-buildable, given that the existing building is there, there's the wetland constraints, there's the topography constraints. However, the open buildable area is definitely suitable to fit a project. So what we're showing here as just a test fit is the approximate size of the new building for the largest option. So a grade of 5 to 8 option, which would result in the greatest square footage. So this test fit is showing just the outline of, we'll say, sort of a 300,000 square foot building that's 4 stories high. Note that there are the existing fields on this site, so some fields could be located on the site still following any kind of project, especially if the existing building were no longer there, but there may have to be some studies as well for where else in the district or the town those fields get replicated. Looking at the Graniteville Road ball field site, kind of similar to the Parker site, there is some wetland area, some floodplain area that we would have to avoid, but relatively flat, given that it's used primarily as recreation fields. And a similar diagram, so you're seeing a lot of the perimeter is considered non-buildable area, but still a more than suitable amount of land area to put an actual building on. Note that any kind of project would also require like roadways and parking and some outdoor areas. And we aren't recommending that you just plop a building right in the middle of the site, so that's just for the test fit purposes. But again, this one also showing a sample 300,000 square foot 4-story building, with the same caveat that any of the fields on this site may or may not have to be relocated or replicated elsewhere in the town. And then lastly, looking at the McCarthy site, which is actually the largest amount of acreage. And it also has that riverfront area. We know there's a water body here that enters a culvert over on this side, and some steep topography at this perimeter that comes down into the rear field. But on this site, we would consider, or it actually results in a lot of non-buildable area, assuming we want to stay away from the existing McCarthy building while that's continuing operation, assuming that the track and field would be off limits. There's also a lot of tree coverage, so a project could require removal of trees if it was determined to be the site to put a project on. So that you can see that's why there's a little bit of a vegetated buffer here. But ultimately, the test fit with the 300,000 square foot 4-story building is the tightest on this site.
Pause on this for a second. I have just a question for the town and the district, because I've attended track meets at this location, and the buildable area is used for track meets, correct?
Well,
Or the track meets that I've attended,
yeah,
it was.
the primary area that we would want to maintain is basically within the fence line of the track. So the field itself and the track that runs around the perimeter, and then it does extend, there's a little fencing around the back. Like that's used not only during the school day for support of the McCarthy Safe Phys Ed program, but also the high school track team and things like that use that space. So we weren't desiring to take the field space or anything like that. We had just previously identified that back corner of McCarthy as like a potential site. Again, I know you're trying to test fit just the largest option that, we're trying to test fit. I don't know personally that largest option really fits back there. It was more in our minds, maybe if we had to, like a smaller option, could potentially fit in that back corner. And that would also include a discussion around what were the grade level configurations, because you'd have probably 7, 8 in some capacity up front. Is there something that made sense with the back grade levels? And then even then integrating like parking and driveways and things like that for pickup, drop-off of kids. But that's why the site had just been identified to be looked at. That back corner isn't necessarily used. but we weren't thinking about doing anything with the field itself or the track that is still functional and needed.
This one, with looking at the 3 site options and even considering the 3 grade level configuration, excuse me, this is a bit of a gut check to see what made sense at the largest scale. And even with the other 2 grade reconfiguration options, the 5-6 and the 4-6, this would be a tight, very restrictive site to work in, even for a 5-6 arrangement, with all the amenities that you talk about, with the access drives, with the vehicular drives, or area around a building that's required for development. This would be extremely tight. So it does give us a good first gut check as far as what might or might not work. But we'll continue to take a look at this and the other options. Yeah.
It's definitely better to have more sites to consider than to only have one and really struggle to fit something on it. So that's the silver lining.
So will you be doing test borings out here as well as?
Those won't be they won't be necessary in either at this stage. Like, it will just be looking at site development of the area, and we'll do some conceptual options for each of the 3 sites. That will provide a lot of information, whether or not to allow you to make that determination of which grade reconfiguration option and also which site to investigate further. Currently, yep.
And the borings for this will be phase 1 boring, so there will be a phase 2, which would occur after the vote. So depending on the site that's selected, we would be able to continue that investigation.
The other question I have is, talk about the replication of fields at, if the expansion or relocation occurs at the Parker site or Graniteville, does that replication cost get included into the cost estimates, or how does the town weigh, or the community weigh that cost in terms of replicating those fields? Because I don't know where those fields would be replicated to. And I know MSBA won't reimburse like land acquisition and so forth, but
Right.
does that get baked into the cost estimates in terms of that replication cost or the loss of those fields to the community?
Yeah, it's certainly something that would need to be identified within each of the cost estimates and each option, right? And would work with left field to identify at least a ballpark figure of what a development cost would be for, and location, and work with you all in a location. So you're comparing apples to apples for each of the options. For sure, that would definitely be included.
I mean, as far as the existing site, those fields are used for gym though too. So is it part of the curriculum site too?
Yes,
So
I
that-
was under the impression that if, let's say, whatever was built on the existing Parker site, and then Parker came offline, when you occupy the new building, you obviously have to demolish the Parker building. And I almost kind of view that as like a trade-off. So you'd open the new building, you'd move in, you then demolish the old building and probably make playable space. Maybe it wouldn't be like quite the field that was at some of the other places,
Right.
but at least you'd have open play area. Is that covered under the project or budgeted for under the project?
It would be.
Okay, so when you talk about like replicating field space, are you talking more like if we did the Graniteville Road one?
That's right.
Then obviously, and that was a site, you couldn't replicate Graniteville at the Parker one, you couldn't really do it at McCarthy, so you'd have to find like an alternate site somewhere in town, and that's when the land acquisition would come in. And that obviously wouldn't be part of the project.
That's exactly.
But something at the Parker project, you could build on the lot and then incorporate the cost to demolish and make a playable space there into the actual project.
The more you can do within the property,
Right.
the better reimbursement formula it works out to be.
Right.
But if you had Graniteville, you still would have demo of the existing Parker in the project budget, or no?
Typically, as far as what our experience has been in understanding the MSBA's approach, is that if you decide to build on another site, that the cost of constructing on that other site is part of the reimbursement project costs. If you decide to develop on the other site, another site, or the existing Parker site, then that is not, that would be excluded from any participation from the MSBA. So demolishing the existing building would be excluded from the participation.
So in other words, we want to work on the same site we're currently on. It's basically what you're telling us.
I mean, because we would have to demo, basically you'd have.
Unless you use it for another municipal purpose. And I think that's what the MSBA's
Well,
response would,
that
that
would
would
be
be
the response,
MSBA's
yeah.
response, is, well, you have this building, and you can elect to do what you want with it, but we're not paying for it.
Abatement, well, let me see how I can phrase this.
The change of use.
The abatement and demo is reimbursable with no cap. However, they don't pay for abatement of flooring or ceiling finishes. So, months back when I explained the riveting process on how reimbursement works, so MSBA will say, yes, we'll reimburse that, but there's always a cap. But with abatement and demo, there is no cap. However, with abatement, there's two finishes that are not reimbursable. That's ceiling and flooring. And my opinion is their logic is that if it's ceiling and flooring finishes, that should have been part of the abatement process within the district, just ongoing. So to Troy's point, that's a big cost that would then be borne to the town.
The other, and I wonder, what would be the restorative effects of the wetlands after demolition of a building like that? I'm sure there'd be an effort, there'd have to be an effort to meet DEP guidelines or EPA guidelines and those types of things.
Yes, the benefit of the existing Parker site is at least where the existing building is, it's already been developed, despite the site constraints showing that it's wetland boundary. So there likely would be some flexibility in that it could be restored to open green space. It wouldn't necessarily have to become wetland again. So it would still be usable. And that would be something that we would confirm through a permitting process with the Chelmsford Conservation Commission later in the process.
Gotcha. Thank you.
But from a cost-benefit analysis, that it is probably likely that the Parker site would be most effective. And as we develop our conceptual building options, those will also come with a landscape plan, a conceptual landscape plan as well. So we'll be working with our landscape architects to make sure that we can fit as many playfields or try to meet the same number of playfields on the existing site. So then that new site concept or addition renovation site concept will also be part of that estimating exercise. So you'll have a cost that includes the building and the site development. So all of those sites, the 3 sites plus the code upgrade option, and that would each have the enrollment option associated with it. And in terms of the Parker site, there would be the new construction options and the addition renovation options. So from an initial standpoint on the number of options, this is looking at 13 options for us to study. As we get further in the process, this evaluation matrix will serve as a tool for evaluating those options against one another. So we will want to work with the committee to confirm and establish the criteria of which all of the options are evaluated against. But this could be, it's something that the MSBA does require as an exercise, but it also serves as just a very qualitative, objective method of weighing the options against one another.
This becomes a great vehicle 12 months from now, when, because people say, well, how did you end up where you ended up? And, this is the vehicle.
Yes, yeah, it does make communicating to the community how the committee was able to get to an option very clear.
And Julie, if you could just comment how the code upgrade, I mean, there's 13 here now, and 13 will become 6 or 5, and then eventually 1, and so forth. I'm just throwing out numbers, but the code upgrade is required as a MSBA policy to continue into the next phase. It doesn't matter what the committee thinks. It's just part of their policy and protocol.
That's correct. And based on our assessments earlier this week, that will help inform an itemized list that we'll give to our cost estimators to be able to provide a cost of option X, or what it would cost just to bring the building up to code, which would likely still be a large sum of money in the millions. And then these are initial options, but following our continued study and conversation with the working group and leadership group on establishing the space summaries and programs specific to each enrollment option, we might find that there are iterations of these, and the committee might feel strongly about adding another new construction option onto Parker site, or whatever the case may be, but we can start to lock what those are within the next couple of building committee meetings. And so our last slide is really just a little bit of a summary of some of the discussion topics from this presentation. So we talked about options, definitely looking to keep the conversation open on which sites are viable for continued study, and also which enrollment options are viable for continued study. So not necessarily looking to eliminate anything tonight, but really just if there was any open discussion on, maybe I'm wrong and the committee does feel a type of way, then we could at least take that information and roll it into the next, for the next building committee meeting.
Yeah, I would ask if, for homework for the committee, if they look at the evaluation criteria that AI3 laid out. We spoke offline, and it's somewhat similar evaluation criteria that is used with other projects, both of our firms have done, but they may be something that is, the committee or a member might be very passionate about, that is not listed there, that you would like to see there. Because at some point, we will, Julie, if you could mind going back one slide, this, we'll call it a rating scorecard. This will be shared with the committee, and we'll set up a kind of a metric, 4 to 0, 4 being highly advantageous and 0, take it off the table. But that's how we've kind of, had come to a consensus. So, this will be shared with you at some point.
Yes.
Just to actually score.
Yeah, getting your feedback sooner rather than later. So the next few building committee meetings, we can make progress on this evaluation matrix would be extremely helpful. And it may be a scenario where we're eliminating sites first, and then we're eliminating options after that. So going through the pros and cons of whether a site is advantageous or not may be irrelevant to the option, the grade reconfiguration. It just might not work in general, or it may be, one of them might be more advantageous. So getting that dialogue going would be really helpful, so that, as Julie mentioned, in December and January, when we need direction from the committee, we'll be in a good place to submit the PDP to the MSBA in January.
And again, regardless of the scoring, code upgrade is going to continue to the next phase. And one addition renovation and one new. So that the MSBA has certain, no matter how you score it and how it, shakes out, you're still carrying a few through.
We did list, just to expand that just a little bit more. We have the educational program, community access, construction phasing, energy efficiency, and cost as sort of the 5 pillars of the matrix. And what we're asking is for you to confirm and/or expand some of the individual items. But just on the top of anybody's head, are there any other major categories that anyone can think of that would be a consideration that we need to include as a category? We can build out the category later, but is there something that that comes to mind that should be a consideration? And if not, that's okay. But this is
Right,
Just
yeah, it's
wanna get
hard
the
when you're
dialogue.
seeing it for the first time.
Yeah, we're not looking for it tonight, but to think
Yeah.
about it.
Right.
And one thing that sometimes happens is you have a certain criteria, pillars and subset of pillars. And then once you go from 13 to 4, sometimes you reevaluate the criteria.
Yeah.
And the pillars adjust sometimes because it might not, well, it's not applicable anymore. So the criteria will change.
Yeah.
And our last slide is just our upcoming events and activities. So the first community forum is scheduled for this Wednesday, the 22nd, 7 p.m. That will include more of a broader intro to the process for the community, similar to tonight, an overview of our existing conditions analyses, the visioning process, and likely some of those inspiration photos that we showed last month, just to get the community interested and excited for the process. And then a second forum is scheduled for November 20th, which I understand will also be the next building committee date. So we'll have the building committee meeting first and then the community forum right after.
So we have it listed here for the committee meeting, the 20th, as Julie said, TBD, but with left field speaking with AI3, you can see that we have, a lot happening, and I know it would be a long evening, but right now I am leaning towards, I think we need to have the meeting, a committee meeting on the 20th, because I feel that we don't want, the project team doesn't want to feel when we get to December and January, we're kind of ramrodding things, through you. So that's just my initial opinion right now.
Would the committee be willing to meet at 5 o'clock maybe that night to give us a little bit more time? I know that's tough for a lot of people, but, or even 5:30, just give us that little edge.
I have to say, for the project team, you tell us when to show up.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. No, what is the will of the committee, I guess? Because it's going to be a fast and furious meeting if we're meeting at 6 o'clock, and then we all have to drive over to the Elks afterwards,
How far
so.
is the Elks from here?
Well, it depends on how busy North Road is.
Okay.
And there is a back way.
Yeah, it could just be a half hour.
Could we have,
15, it could be
could we
15
have the
minutes,
meeting
yeah.
at the Elks?
Oh, we
You can
could
meet
be
at
at
the
the
house.
Elks, yeah.
You won't have televised, but you can meet there.
How about the police department?
You could tell me to videotape.
Yeah, yeah.
still have it, but it wouldn't be live.
That'd keep us from running around.
They're taping the session. No, they're gonna just tape the session, but if they're there, maybe we could have them tape the meeting.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be quite as structured as this, but that at least be easier for us to be in the same space and then just roll into the public session.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. So we would leave the committee meeting at 6 o'clock, then just knock it out in an hour and then just turn right over.
Or we could even, if you want, we could kind of poll people. I mean, maybe if, let's see what items we have, how long we think they would take. If we really think an hour's maybe pushing it, maybe we could ask people if they could do 5:30 or 5:45. But we could put a little email out to just see who's available.
Okay.
But at least we'll just do it there.
It's a good way.
And that way we can roll right into the community
Yeah,
session.
I just, like, if people can put it as a placeholder right now. And like you said, we can dial in the time based on the agenda and what we want to present and kind of get feedback.
Good.
Excellent.
Okay. It was, did we talk about having a third public visioning session, or is it just,
No, there is one in December. I
there is
think
one in
they were-
December, right?
Is it?
It's just not listed in
Just
this
not listed, yeah,
presentation, but
okay.
yes. It's in the 4-month calendar. If you could go back, Julie, it's,
Wednesday, the 7th.
perfect.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The town did do an electrification study just to really ballpark estimate how we would electrify our schools. Parker was included in that. It's a very high-level ballpark estimate, and it showed, I mean, it's costly for a lot of our buildings just because how they weren't, they were built so long ago. So I will forward it along, it's just a tool to help with, because they went through every electric bill, gas bill, and it does show that these buildings are not meant for the current stretch code, so.
You know, if the town was looking to purchase all of the solar,
We own the solar on all the schools.
it's good to know.
Solar reimbursable item to the project?
Want me to take this one? I'm going to say no, but here's the asterisk, is that there's a cap with construction, the allowable construction, cost per square foot of construction. So if you do solar or don't do solar, you're still going to be over that cap. So it's, I can't answer that with, it's going to be over the cap.
There are additional reimbursement incentives, though, through their Green Schools program. So if this committee elects to pursue the specialized stretch energy code for a building project, then the MSBA there would be a extra reimbursable incentive for that as a result.
Actually, they increased it to 4%,
Yeah.
additional 4%.
And there's other grants and avenues that I think Hamdi has become an expert on.
Fire station,
Likely not federally,
Yeah.
but statewide.
yeah.
Yeah. But if those come in, you still have to report them to the MSBA, so it's not like you can double dip.
Okay.
The only other criteria that comes to mind, it could be for an evaluation criteria, just an abstract, would be environmental. In other words, does the community value, particularly for the current Parker site, when looking at the three of the options, the Fields and then the McCarthy site, Graniteville and McCarthy, there may be a value in the community for the environmental, what we were talking earlier about the restoration and of that site in terms of the wetland area and environmental impact. Because, when we look at those, evaluation matrix, that's sort of the only notion that came to me in terms of what's not listed that a community may value, and that might be environmental impact. And so that, I don't know how you flush that out, but I think that might be, because you've already got the green part with the energy efficiency, the only other aspect of that would be our environmental impact,
You
in
might
terms of
be able
wetlands, so forth.
to rename that category to sustainability, just I was thinking.
sustainability or something,
sustainability
yeah.
Is, we have you know, we really, it's energy efficiency, but also environmental impacts. And so if you kind of pair those together under that category, just rename it, you might be able to avoid adding a whole category.
Under environmental with it, I was just wondering, under environmental, would that also bring into the discussion, like what the removal of green space would be? As far as like if we, you know, removed Graniteville from the equation, like we really don't have another place to create it.
Right.
You know, if we put something at McCarthy, you know, technically we're removing space and we're not addressing that in any way.
Right.
So however it gets put up there, I wonder if that could come into the discussion.
Yeah, or
Under environmental,
Yeah,
you know.
or even about McCarthy, if we cut down all those trees, we know from our experience, that's gonna get a reaction in an adverse way, the loss of the tree canopy and so forth. So that, I'm saying that it's that sustainability, environmental, green, in addition to energy efficiency, I think is what we're trying to struggle with. 'Cause
How, and maybe you have some insight on this, how the climate action plan, the greens, open space and recreation plan, and the new overall strategic plan plays into this in some of these very specific components of that, some of which you mentioned, right? And maybe that dovetails into this evaluation matrix as well.
Yeah, because if, like I said, if we lose the fields at Graniteville, there is a concern that we don't have adequate amount of open space, particularly for active recreation. And that would, you know, and that's why I asked my question earlier, like, what, does that factor into the cost analysis or consideration? Because I don't know where you replicate that off, because if there were, we'd already be doing it. Quite frankly, if it was that simple, we'd be actively doing that, and we just haven't been able to identify a location, and not to mention, you said not only identify it, but then acquire it and then produce it into usable fields, which is not insignificant.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a category, like how does this align with some of these larger master plans as a category? But I think energy efficiency could be built for sustainability or as a separate category, whether it trees. And then there's also, it's associated with, before really design is the permitting. If there's some project that is more of a permitting challenge, that might sway you one way. So.
Right.
And I don't know if that is the case, because it seems like all sites have riverfront, so you want to avoid it. But if there's one site, so permitting might be under construction. I mean, I know it comes before construction, but it is a design.
I mean, MEPR has,
Yeah, that has,
that's permitting luggage. It has to be in the equation.
Yep.
Because there's going to be a dollar value to that. Not just with the management of the MEPA process, but I think it's just the length of the time and the schedule. Time is money. So
I guess you have cost. Is there in any scenario that schedule would be less too? I don't know if usually, cost is a function of schedule too, but I don't know if schedule, if there was one project that, I guess it depends on the size of the school and the site too, but.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point, because an addition renovation project is inherently going to take longer than a new construction option. So we could make sure that that is included on one of
Construction
these.
phasing, right?
Oh, yep, okay.
Yep.
we always say the longer you see us, the more money it's going to cost.
Oh, no.
Ready to choose now?
Yeah.
Christine, the easement and water main for the district that goes through McCarthy, is that in the area for the proposed fields, school?
It is,
buildable
yeah.
area?
It is, but it's in that, if you go back to that site, it actually does cut through this site, so we will have to send those easement plans. It does cut through that site, so yeah, I guess.
In that area where it just does, I just don't want it to lose it.
On the other
Right.
site, though, the Graniteville site, it does cut through it as well,
Yeah.
but it's really just that 20 feet on the edge of Graniteville.
And at
So it has
McCarthy.
less of an impact, and it's just it's an easement for a water main, so I don't know if it would have as large of an impact, because you could probably still put a building, but I will send those along. They're still being fine,
I think at Parker, the area that they have grade off, I think is where the easement would fall.
maybe I gotta double check
Yeah.
to see that one. I was focused on.
Parker or McCarthy?
I'm sorry, this is Parker, right?
This is the Graniteville,
Graniteville, sorry. If you
Graniteville,
go to the Parker one for a second.
because it comes down Crooked Springs,
Oh,
so.
all right, now, I thought that was Crooked Spring, so no.
Yeah,
we
so
would have to
it
look at
comes
that.
down Crooked Springs, so that 20-foot setback is essentially the easement. So you're not building there anyway. So it shouldn't have, but I guess that's something.
Town GIS?
No, we're just going through easement, finalize the easement with the water district right now. But I will send those plans too, because maybe it's like permitting and easement coordination, because that is potentially, I think, more for the McCarthy site might be the most problematic. You can probably still fit in a building, because it's a water main, but,
Yeah, sort of a site development restrictions category, which is a component of the PDP that will be reported on too. So that'll be
I'll send
helpful
those.
information.
They're just being final, like, they're just not stamped yet, so I'll just, it should be by next week, and I'll send them along.
Okay, great. Anything else?
Anything else under upcoming events and activities? We're good with the meetings. I don't see any of the general public here, so I don't expect there's any public comment this evening. And is there anything else before I ask for a motion to adjourn? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
There you go. You got to.
Motion by Dennis King, second by Jim.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.